If you want to fix your bad landings, you have to know what you're doing wrong. If you want to make adjustments, that'll bring out those buttery smooth landings.
But a lot of times your instructor might not even know what caused a bad landing. And this means that students don't always get the feedback they need to fix the problem.
Today on Free Pilot Training, I'm going to take in some landing videos sent in by you guys, and I'll do my best to let you know what I see and how you can improve those landings in the future. And hopefully that'll help everyone watching these videos.
Before I show you these videos, I do want to mention that I'm not perfect either, but I do have over 1,500 landings under my belt, and on many of them I had an Air Force instructor watching me and giving me feedback when I smashed one in. Yeah, that's not me in this particular video, but I've definitely had my share of bad landings, and with all that feedback I've received over the years, I don't smash in quite so often anymore. And with all this feedback that I've received, it's a lot easier for me to spot the issues that cause a bad landing. So, let's see what you guys sent me. The first video today comes from Sebastian in Germany, and overall Sebastian has some really good landings. But I'm picking out the worst one here because it's the easiest one for me to give feedback on, which I think can help everybody watching today. Now, being in the plane and watching from a computer screen are quite a bit different. It's really difficult to feel exactly what the airplane is doing, and it's difficult to see the instruments. But I think I can still help you out here.
Das war scheiße.
Okay, now once again, it's difficult to tell from the video, but first of all, you may consider trying to come in a little shallower. From my perspective, I feel like your glide slope is closer to 3.5 to 4 degrees versus 3. Now this is personal preference, but it's typically a little easier to land out of a shallower angle because there's more room for error when you start the round out and flare. Here on this landing, I think what's happening is that you're shifting your aim point a little bit early, and this ultimately causes a little bit of a high flare, which can cause you to slow down exponentially. I noticed that you added a bump of power there, and that's a good technique if you start the round out too high, but I feel like you didn't actually need it on this particular landing. It's tough to tell since I can't see your speed, but I'm thinking that you might have been a little fast, which is why you ballooned up a little bit. Keep in mind, if you're at your landing speed when you start the flare, you're too fast. Touchdown speed should be slower than that. You should be touching down somewhere between 6 and 10 knots below your landing speed. So if you're above that, it's going to be a little tougher for you.
Overall, great landings, but hopefully these tips will help you out. Next, we have Jack over at the New Haven Airport in Connecticut. Let's take a look and see what he's got.
Now, before I assess this landing, I've just got one question for you. How old is your instructor? He looks like he's 18 years old from here. Good for him. I wish I'd started that early. Anyway, let's see what you got for me here. Okay, I like your glide slope here, Jack. This looks like a little bit better approach angle to me. And everything's looking pretty decent, but right in here we've got a couple really small premature level offs. And those aren't necessarily a huge deal, but based on the stall horn, you're already at a good airspeed. So you probably do need the bump of power to keep you from sinking as you start the flare. If you don't use the bump of power, you can also just be more aggressive in the flare to keep from plopping in the landing if it's not too egregious. Now, watch the ending of this video a couple times, and even though you leveled off a little bit early, I still think you could have had a smooth landing out of this, but you just relinquished the controls a little too early. You want to continue to pull back more and more on the yoke even after the airplane touches down. And it looks to me like you just kind of let go right as the airplane was about to touch down. And this is really what caused that landing to be a little bit firm. This is actually a super common issue with a lot of student pilots. You just got to keep flying the plane and keep pulling back on that yoke and follow through like you're shooting a free throw. This will stop that sink rate, and it'll also allow for a smooth touchdown.
Not too bad though. Just keep pulling back more and more on that yoke to keep that nose frozen on the horizon, even after you touch down. Follow through. That's what I have for you.
Next we have Scott, who's a truck driver. Let's take a look at what he sent us.
Caution, sink rate. Sink rate, pull up.
And that was 2, again, rough, fast.
Okay, so a little bit of a bounce here, nothing to be ashamed of. I've had my share of those. I actually landed on an LZ one time in the desert, and one of the passengers asked me if we landed twice. Anyway, the root cause of this bad landing here is your approach angle. Just like Sebastian, you're coming in a little too high, and I actually think your approach angle might even be steeper than his. Now, this wouldn't be a huge issue, but it looks like you're also struggling with the airspeed here. Anytime you need to fix airspeed and altitude, always fix your airspeed first and then your altitude. Your airplane can fly steeper angles at slower airspeeds, and I've said this before, but this works in big and small airplanes. So get that airspeed under control and then get down as fast as you can, as far out as you can if you're high, so you can come in at a better angle because you have more time to round out and flare when you do this. Now, it's hard to tell from the airspeed indicator, but I think you're at a pretty good airspeed when you started the flare. But if you watch the airspeed indicator here, your airspeed is deteriorating super fast. And I think that's because you shifted your aim point a little high as well. In other words, you rounded out a little bit high. It looks like you caught it though, and then you brought it on down, but your airspeed was kind of already on a downward trend, so the aircraft was sinking a bit more than you anticipated. And that caused you to have an incomplete flare, which bounced you back up into the atmosphere. Because of that high sink rate, you needed to flare a little bit more there to make that touchdown a little bit smoother. And then you just kind of got into a small pilot-induced oscillation there at the end. I thought you did a good job fixing that though. Overall, good job. Get stable earlier in the approach and come in at a shallower angle, and that'll make it easier to figure out when to start the round out and flare. It's also a lot more difficult to flare in the right spot at those steeper angles. You have a lot bigger room for error when you come in at a shallower angle.
Next, we have a video from Bryce, and this video comes from one of his solo cross-country flights in Utah.
Let's see what Bryce's landing looked like. By the way, Bryce gave me permission to use this video from his YouTube channel. Be sure to check out his channel if you're into flying, and I'll put a link in the description for you guys if that sounds cool.
Thursday Troy Bravo, taxi via Alpha 2, Bravo, Charlie, crossway 18 to approach in.
Cross by Alpha 2, taxi by Alpha 2, Bravo, Charlie, cross 18, Charlie Bravo.
Collision 3223 ground. 3223, bad news, wheels up time, 2222, time now, 2137 and 1/2.
Do it again. Ah. Ah. What the?
Whew, clips like this make me nervous. Good call on the go-around. I've had my share of those. One thing I want to mention here is that when you get over the runway and the airplane starts to slow down, those ailerons start to lose effectiveness super fast. So you really have to increase those crosswind controls as the airplane slows down. That's why you got pushed over so much on the go-around. Okay, so let's rewind here and see if we can figure out the root cause of this rough landing. Looks like we've got a great start here. This looks like a really good glide slope. But one thing I'm wondering about here is your airspeed. It looks to me like you might be a little fast when you start the flare because the airplane's just floating and then all of a sudden it just drops to the runway without warning. Remember, airspeed deteriorates exponentially because of induced drag. So it's really difficult to judge when to start the flare if you're fast because you have to go from being really gentle on the controls to being really aggressive, and that happens in a really short amount of time. And if you're not super experienced, it can be really tough to do that. You had a good flare picture for just a second, and when that airspeed started to bleed off exponentially there, you needed to pull harder to freeze that nose on the horizon. But you just kind of let it settle, and you ended up with a 3-point or maybe a nose wheel landing there. It's kind of tough to tell from the video. Then you got into a little bit of a porpoise there, which was caused by over-controlling the airplane. But good call on the go-around. Looks like you made the decision pretty quick. Just be a little more aggressive when you're slow like that to get those crosswind controls in. I personally like using the wing low method, but whatever you use, I would just rather be over the runway in case I accidentally touch down during the go-around. Sometimes that dirt over the runway can be really sticky and cause bad things to happen. It's also more comfortable to fly in ground effect when you're directly over the runway because it gives you quite a bit of protection when it comes to reduced drag and increased control authority. But hey, you walked away from that landing, so overall good job. But take this feedback and see what you can do with it.
Next, we have Jack, who's really testing my abilities as a CFI by sending me a short field landing he's wanting to improve on. Let's see what you got, Jack.
When Jack sent this over to me, he told me that here in this video clip, he's wanting to land right in the middle of those numbers. So let's see what happens here. Jack's got a YouTube channel too. Check that out if you have time. Okay, overall excellent landing. He'd probably give me a run for my money if we had a landing competition. But I do know why you didn't land right on your spot, so take my feedback for what it's worth. Now let's watch this clip again and watch what you do right here after the video footage zooms in. Now Jack gave me a little bit of background on this video. He told me that he added a bump of power because the stall horn was chirping at him. And that's fine, but the reason he touched down a little long was because he shifted his aim point a little bit when he did that. Remember, if you increase power, that prop wash can cause the nose to come up. So if you're right on profile, you have to fight that to keep that from happening. Anytime I'm making power adjustments on final, I'm guarding the yoke to keep it from moving, because it's very susceptible to those power changes, especially at slow air speeds. So take that for what it's worth. Hopefully it can help you with your short field landings in the future. And I hope you guys enjoyed this video today. I do want to thank all these guys for sending in these videos to me. I know it's not fun to put your mistakes on display, but I promise you we've all had landings like this. So use this feedback to make yourself better, and I look forward to hearing about all your success stories in the comments below. If anyone else has bad landings they want to send over to me, I'll put an email address in the description. And if the email's gone, I'm not taking any more submissions at this time because you guys are an awesome community, and I always get good content from you guys when I ask for it.
I love a good movie, don't you? As always, be sure to smash that like button before you get out of here. Thanks for watching. See ya.